In a desolate city, a frail young man named Sonny. His life was dwindling away, and he decided to treat himself to a cup of real coffee, a luxury he rarely indulged in. Feeling out of place amidst the bustling city and its affluent citizens, Sonny tossed the empty cup into a garbage bin. He entered the police station across the street. Inside, a tired officers questioned if Sonny was lost. Sonny explained that he was there to surrender himself as a carrier of the nightmare spell. The officers asked when Sonny started showing symptoms. Sonny confessed it had been about a week. Realizing the gravity of the situation, the officers urgently called for a code black. The nightmare spell had plagued the world for decades, causing its victims to suffer from constant fatigue and sleepiness before succumbing to a monstrous transformation. Sonny's admission sent shockwaves through the police station, alerting everyone to the imminent danger. Years ago, when natural disasters and resource wars ravaged the planet, the emergence of the nightmare spell caused widespread panic. The infected would descend into a deadly slumber, only to awaken as dreaded nightmare creatures. The world was ill-prepared for such a threat, but a group known as the Awakened, those who survived their own nightmares, emerged as defenders of humanity with newfound powers. The Awakened came from well-to-do families who could afford proper training and preparation. But for Sonny, who came from deprivation and had no connections, being chosen by the spell seemed like a death sentence. He knew little more than what mass media and propaganda had shared about the spell. Enter the dream realm, fight monsters, and gain magical abilities. Back in the police station's basement, Sonny found himself restrained in a chair, surrounded by heavily armed officers. Time was running out. Sonny could barely keep his eyes open, and experienced officers entered and questioned him. Sonny explaining that he had no family and was ill-equipped to survive the upcoming trial. The officers shared vital information about the spell and its nightmares. Sonny learned that these nightmares were not real, but their defeat was essential for survival. The officers emphasized the importance of discovering one's aspects and attributes within the dream realm. As they determined the individual's powers, combat-oriented aspects were common and advantageous, but other aspects and utility powers had their own uses. In a haze of sleepiness, Sonny realized the officer's plea to survive was not only for his sake, but for the protection of others. If Sonny were to die within the nightmare, a nightmare creature would be unleashed into the real world. Sonny drifted into a deep slumber, and a faint voice called out, "Aspirant, welcome to the nightmare spell. Prepare for your first trial." Sonny dreamt of a magnificent mountain, tall and imposing, dominating the rest of the peaks in the range, bathed in the silver light of the moon. It seemed almost otherworldly. He noticed a worn road carved into its slopes, partially covered in snow. The road clung stubbornly to the rocks, offering glimpses of ancient paved stones. To the right of the road, a sheer cliff wall stood tall, while to the left, an abyss stretched out into nothingness. Time seemed to reverse itself. The moon descended below the horizon, and the sun rose from the west, moving swiftly across the sky before disappearing in the east. Snowflakes danced, rising from the ground and returning to the clouds above. Sonny realized he was witnessing the flow of time in reverse. Centuries flew by in an instant, and as the snow dissipated, Sonny saw human bones scattered across the ground. Then, a slave caravan appeared, moving backward down the mountain. Shackled in chains, time paused, then resumed its normal course. Suddenly, Sonny found himself in a nightmarish situation. He was a slave, shackled and suffering from freezing temperatures. He saw countless slaves, their hollow eyes reflecting their despair. A man ahead of him had a bloody back, while another cursed silently in a foreign language. Armed horsemen passed by, their glares filled with menace. Feeling bewildered rather than panicked, Sonny realized this was not the ideal scenario for a first nightmare. Sonny decided to access his aspect, a special ability granted by the nightmare spell. Concentrating, he summoned shimmering runes that displayed information about his aspect. To his dismay, he discovered that his aspect, called Temple Slave, offered no notable skills or abilities. As he continued walking, he accidentally pulled on the chain, causing the slave behind him to threaten him. However, a third voice offered a different perspective, warning against harming Sonny due to his unique background as a temple slave. The conversation was interrupted by a young soldier on horseback. Though appearing noble, the soldier showed concern for the tired and cold slaves. Another soldier, older and angrier, whipped Sonny when the younger soldier tried to offer him water. The older soldier emphasized the slave's lack of humanity, leaving Sonny filled with resentment toward him. Sonny vowed to watch the older soldier's demise. With determination and anger fueling him, Sonny pressed on, ready to face whatever challenges awaited him. Sonny found himself in a slave caravan, slowly making its way up a mountain. The polluted air of the real world felt like a distant memory. Here, he breathed the clean air of the wilderness, like an heir to a fortune. One of the few pleasures in his enslaved life, despite the cold and the physical pain he was experiencing. Sonny remained in good spirits. He had accepted his impending death, having already come to terms with it after visiting his parents' resting place. As the caravan moved forward, some slaves were unable to continue and were thrown off the road into an abyss. Sonny watched with compassion as they fell. Knowing his fate would be different, he decided to examine his status and summon the runes. He discovered that his innate attribute was faded, which made improbable events more likely to occur around him. He also had the attributes of Mark of Divinity and Child of Shadows, although their significance was unclear to him initially. With the sun hidden behind the mountain, Sonny realized his attribute of Child of Shadows allowed him to see perfectly in darkness. This newfound ability gave him hope. The caravan eventually stopped to rest, and the soldiers created a campfire for warmth. Despite being shackled and forced to sit at the outer end of the circle, Sonny remained hopeful. The soldiers distributed water and food to the slaves, but their rations were meager and inadequate. The shifty slave behind Sonny complained about the conditions and expressed resentment over the treatment they received. The gentle-voiced slave warned against eating the bright red berries growing nearby, explaining they were poisonous and could kill a person. Ignoring this conversation, Sonny recognized the campsite as the location where he had seen the bones of previous slaves in a vision. He sensed that something terrible was about to happen. Suddenly, a thundering noise rang out, and a massive object crashed down from the sky. Rocks and heavy ice fell on them from above. In the midst of the chaos and danger, Sonny stayed calm and observant. He stared into the night sky, his ever-enhanced eyes piercing the darkness, and took a step backward. In the next instant, a chunk of ice the size of a man's torso landed and exploded in front of him. The creature stood tall, with thick legs, an emaciated torso, and long, multi-jointed hands ending in bony claws. Its fur was yellow-gray, ragged and seemingly impenetrable. What truly unsettled Sonny were the wriggling shapes moving under the creature's skin as it attacked, slashing its claws towards him. Sonny reacted swiftly. He managed to dodge the claws, but his companion was not as fortunate. Blood splattered through the air as the claw sliced through the man's body, leaving him lifeless. The weight of the corpse pinned Sonny to the ground. As Sonny struggled to free himself, the chain restraining him suddenly loosened. Just as he managed to push the heavy corpse aside, the body began to convulse, and strange bone growths pierced its skin. Its muscles bulged and wriggled, transforming the dead man into a nightmarish creature. Sonny realized the creature was not supposed to exist in the first nightmare. It was a tyrant, a higher-ranking entity than typically encountered. With the creature rapidly approaching, Sonny was left to rely on his own skills and resourcefulness. He grabbed the length of the chain and wrapped it around the creature, immobilizing its hands, urging to other slaves to help him. They pulled on the chain with all their strength, restraining the monster. The chain took frequent strain. Thinking quickly, Sonny used the shorter chain connecting his shackles to throttle the creature. He stood back to back with it, as far away from its deadly maw as possible. Sonny strained against the creature's weight, using his entire body and every ounce of strength to pull the shackles down. It was a battle against time and his waning stamina. The minutes felt like hours, as Sonny endured immense pain from his wounds. His strength dwindled, but he refused to give up. Finally, the creature's body went limp. Sonny had triumphed over the monstrous beast. In that fleeting moment of relief, the most beautiful sound he had ever heard. You have slain a dormant beast, Mountain King's larva.